Hi everybody, welcome to Shell Lectures. So in this video we'll be talking about charge on colloidal particles. So we know that colloidal particles always carry an electric charge, and only due to the repulsion which exists between the similar charges which surround the colloidal particles, they are not settling down. Under the influence of gravity they are not settling down, and hence they are very stable. So we can say that only due to the electric charge the colloidal particles are stable in nature. And we have positively charged colloidal particles and at the same time negatively charged colloidal particles, some of which are given here. Positively charged metallic hydroxides and hydrated metallic oxides, basic dyestuff, proteins in acidic medium, blood is a natural colloidal sol. Here we have metallic sulfides, acid dyestuff, metals like gold, silver, copper, platinum, and proteins in basic medium, salts of starch, gum, gelatin, clay, and charcoal. So these are the positively and negatively charged colloidal solutions. Then we have to know about electrical double layer. So there are two layers which surround a sol particle. Okay, there are two layers which surround a colloidal sol. One is positive and the other is negative. Okay, so the first layer of ions which surrounds the sol particle is actually very firmly held, very tightly held layer, and it's known as fixed layer or compact layer, while the second layer is just a bit mobile. That's why it is termed as diffused layer. So fixed layer and diffused layer, the picture of which you can see here. This is the fixed layer which just surrounds the sol particles, and this is the mobile layer. This is also known as compact layer. Then we have to know about, we have some more points to be learned here. In electrical double layer, actually the diffuse layer is actually very loosely attached to the particle surface, and the particles there move in the opposite direction when an electric field is applied. So if the electric field is in one direction, then the particles in the diffused layer will be in the opposite direction. And the potential difference between these two layers, like fixed layer and mobile layer, is known as electrokinetic potential or zeta potential. So the potential difference which is built between the mobile layer and the fixed layer is known as electrokinetic potential or zeta potential. Then we have electrophoresis. So if an electric potential is applied across two platinum electrodes, if we have some two platinum electrodes and if we apply electric potential and we are dipping it into a colloidal solution, what happens? A colloidal solution will have colloidal particles, right? So the colloidal particles will be moving towards the other electrode. So if they are positive, they will be moving towards a negative electrode. If they are negative, they will be moving towards a positive electrode. So this can happen only under an applied electric potential, right? This process is known as electrophoresis. If they are moving towards cathode, it's known as cataphoresis. If they are moving towards anode, it's known as anaphoresis. So from this we can come to know that colloidal particles are charged particles. Only then they can be attracted towards cathode and anode. Then we have to know about electroosmosis. So the dispersion medium will move in the opposite direction to the dispersed phase when we apply an electric potential. Okay, so this movement of dispersion medium, that is in the opposite direction to the applied potential, is known as electroosmosis. Okay, electroosmosis is the movement of dispersion medium under the influence of electric potential. Then we have coagulation or precipitation. Coagulation or precipitation is nothing but stability of a lyophobic sol. Actually, a lyophobic sol is stable only due to the ions which it had absorbed. Okay, the dispersed particles would have given some ions, and those ions are absorbed on the dispersion medium, and that is why they are stable. And the repulsion forces do not allow them to settle. I told you earlier that the repulsive forces of the similar charges which are present around the colloidal particles do not allow them to settle. So, but if the charge is removed, then there is nothing to keep them apart from each other, right? So they get aggregated and they settle down. This process is known as coagulation or precipitation or flocculation. So the flocculation of the dispersed phase is known as coagulation or precipitation. There are 5 ways of bringing out precipitation which have been written here. A, B, C, D, and E is on the other page. So the first thing which we have to know is about by addition of electrolytes. By adding electrolytes to colloidal solution, we can form precipitate. That is, we can precipitate the solution. When you are adding electrolyte in excess, what happens is the electrolyte will furnish both of the ion. So the oppositely charged ions alone get absorbed on the colloidal particles. So what happens? Neutralization occurs, and then the mass of the colloidal particles gets somewhat increased and it changes into suspended particles. So now what happens, as as the mass has increased and the volume has also increased, the particles will settle down. Okay, so here the ion which is responsible for the neutralization is known as flocculating ion. So this is how we can precipitate. By adding electrolytes, the oppositely charged ions get absorbed. So what happens? Neutralization occurs, the mass and the volume increases, so they settle down and coagulate. Here we have to know about a very important rule under this topic, which is Hardy-Schulze rule, which says, the rule states that the precipitating effect of an ion on dispersed phase of opposite charge increases with valency of the ion. Okay, so it increases with the valency of the ion. So higher the valency of the ion, greater is its coagulating power. For example, if we take As2S3, arsenic sulfide, the precipitating power of Al, the valency of Al is 3, right? So it's Al3 plus, barium 2 plus and Na plus. Out of these three, which valency is higher? Al is higher, right? So its coagulating power will be much. So the order will be Al3 plus is greater than, Ba2 plus is greater than Na plus. Similarly for FeOH thrice also, here the valency is 3, 2, 1. So higher the valency, higher will be the coagulating power. So that is one important rule which we must know under by adding electrolytes. So what is flocculation value? That is nothing but the minimum concentration of electrolyte which must be added for precipitation to occur. It's known as flocculation value. So the flocculation value and coagulating power are inversely proportional to each other. Then we have electrophoresis, by which coagulation can occur. So now we are learning about coagulation. So electrophoresis. Electrophoresis is nothing but the charged salt particles will be migrating towards their opposite electrode, right? So they when they migrate to their opposite electrode, they will deposit their charge and they will get coagulated. Okay, they will get coagulated because neutralization occurred there. And then we have C, mixing two oppositely charged salts. Okay, mixing two oppositely charged salts. So here, when we mix FeOH thrice, which is a positive salt, with arsenic sulfide, which is a negative salt, they just neutralize each other, they join together and they coagulate. Okay, so if we are mixing two salts of opposite charge, then we can form coagulation. Okay, then we have boiling. Some salts such as sulfur and silver halides, when they are put in water and they are boiled, okay, so what happens? They get coagulated. Okay, but why do they get coagulated? They get coagulated because the adsorbed charged layer is removed. So the salt particles settle down. Due to boiling, the adsorbed particles are removed, so they settle down. And then we have by repeated dialysis. Repeated again and again, if we are doing dialysis, that is purifying. Okay, we learned, we dealt with this in the previous video. For those who do not know what is dialysis, can refer to my previous video. So if we are repeatedly dialyzing it, again it gets coagulated. Then we have to know about the coagulation of lyophilic salts. So how does lyophilic salts get coagulated? So lyophilic salts, we know very well that they are very stable because they have a high affinity towards dispersion medium. So they are highly solvated. So and also they possess less charge. They do not possess much charge, whereas lyophobic possess much charge. So these two factors, only if they are removed, then they can be coagulated. So how can we do that? If we are adding electrolyte or if we are adding some suitable solvent, what will happen? The lyophilic salt will get coagulated. So for example, we can take alcohol and acetone, these solvents. So I told you that by adding solvent, we can coagulate a lyophilic salt. If we are adding alcohol and acetone to hydrophilic salt, what happens? The dehydration of, actually the water content gets lost. Am I right? So the water content gets lost. So due to that, that is the affinity between the dispersed phase and the dispersion medium goes off. So in that case, it will get coagulated. Then we have to deal about protection. So protection is nothing but lyophobic salts, as I told you earlier, are easily precipitated when we add some amount of electrolytes, right? So these lyophobic salts can be protected by lyophilic salts, and that process is known as protection. And the lyophilic salt which is used to protect is known as protective colloid. Okay, what does it do actually? It forms a thin layer around the lyophobic salt. Okay, and therefore the coagulation cannot take place. Something like this, the lyophilic salt will form a thin layer around the lyophobic salt. So this is protected colloid, this is protective colloid. Okay. So the protective colloids which we can use, that is lyophilic salts which we can use for this purpose, are gelatin, albumin, gum arabic, potato starch. Okay, gelatin, albumin, gum arabic and potato starch. So the protective power is actually different for different lyophilic salts, which is measured by a unit known as gold number. That is very important. Gold number is very important. So what is gold number? The measuring power of the measurement of protective power of lyophilic salts. So the gold numbers definition can be put as the number of milligrams of a hydrophilic colloid that will just prevent the precipitation of 10 ml of gold salt on addition of 1 ml of NaCl solution. That is, if you are adding 1 ml of NaCl solution or 1 ml of electrolyte, it will just get precipitated because gold salt is lyophobic, right? So if the number of milligrams that we use of a lyophilic colloid that we use to prevent this precipitation from occurring is known as gold number. Okay, so the gold number is inversely proportional to protection power. So smaller the gold number, greater is the protective power. So here we can see some gold numbers. For gelatin it's this much, egg albumin. So potato starch has the highest gold number, which means what is that? It will not protect that much, whereas gelatin will protect much. Okay, so because its gold number is very low. I told you that they both are inversely proportional. So protection capacity is inversely proportional to gold number. So gelatin has the highest and starch has the lowest. Okay, and then we have to know about applications of colloids. So the first thing about applications of colloids is electrical precipitation of smoke. So the first thing is electrical precipitation of smoke. So what is smoke? First of all, smoke is itself a colloidal solution of solid particles such as carbon and dust. Okay, all these compounds to combine together to form smoke. So before the smoke comes out of the chimney, it is led through a chamber which contains some plates having charge opposite to each other. Okay, if the smoke particles are having positive, then the plates will be having negative charge. So before they are out of the chimney, they are put to this chamber which contains plates which have opposite charge. So when the smoke particles come towards these plates, what will happen? Electrophoresis. So they come here and they will get coagulated. So what will happen? Coagulation will occur, and this precipitator is known as Cottrell precipitator, which diagram is given here. Cottrell precipitator. Okay. And then the second application of colloids is that it can purify drinking water. So there are impurities in drinking water to which we can add alum. Okay, potash alum or any other alum can be added. So what happens is it just coagulates the impurities and makes the water fit. Okay, then the third thing is medicines. Medicines are often available in the colloidal form because they can easily be absorbed. Okay, they are more effective as they have large surface area. As they have large surface area, most of the medicines are in colloidal form. And then cleansing action of soaps and detergents. This has already been discussed in a previous video which you can refer to in my YouTube channel. Then we have rubber industry. Actually, latex is itself a colloidal solution of rubber particles. They are negatively charged. So if you coagulate latex, you will be getting rubber. Okay, then industrial products like paints, inks, plastics, rubber, cement are all colloidal solutions. Okay, so that's it. The remaining part we'll be seeing in the next video. Subscribe to my channel if you have not done so far. Like and share this video to whomever you know. Thank you so much for watching.